Welcome back, everyone. You've been doing some pretty in-depth research on schizophrenia, and I gotta say, the stuff is really fascinating. It looks like scientists might have pinpointed a particular gene mutation and are even exploring ways to maybe counteract its effects.
Yeah, it really is remarkable how even a tiny tweak in our genes can have such a huge impact on brain chemistry. It's like a domino effect.
So before we go too far down that road, maybe we should touch on um, the complexity of schizophrenia. We're talking about, hallucinations, delusions, cognitive issues, and even social withdrawal. And of course, it's this mix of genetic and environmental factors, right? Which makes it a tough nut to crack.
Absolutely. And a really critical area of research in schizophrenia is NMDA receptors. You can think of these as like communication hubs in the brain. They're vital for things like learning and memory.
And these receptors need certain chemicals to function properly, right? Like glutamate and glycine, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Exactly. Now, glycine isn't just a building block of protein. It's also a key player in brain signaling. It kind of works together with glutamate at those NMDA receptors, helping them function properly.
Okay, so if these NMDA receptors are so important, what happens when they, don't work right? Could that be part of why we see those symptoms in schizophrenia?
That's the idea behind the NMDA receptor hypofunction hypothesis. Basically, it suggests that underactive NMDA receptors are a big contributor to those schizophrenia symptoms. And the research you've been looking at points to a specific gene mutation that may be disrupting these receptors.
Right, the GLDC gene mutation. Something about was it a triplication?
Yep, you got it. GLDC is the blueprint for an enzyme that breaks down glycine. So a triplication, well, that means having 3 copies of this gene instead of the usual 2. It's like having an extra dose of that enzyme, which might actually lead to a shortage of glycine in the brain.
So basically, these individuals could be breaking down too much of a crucial brain chemical, and that's messing with brain function. That's a big clue for potential treatments, right?
Precisely. To test this theory, researchers created mice with the same GLDC triplication. What's really interesting is that these mice started exhibiting behaviors that were pretty similar to some of the symptoms we see in humans with schizophrenia.
Hold on, they actually gave mice a human gene mutation. That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It's cutting-edge science for sure, and incredibly insightful. These mice had trouble learning, showed signs of social awkwardness, and even had measurable changes in brain activity, especially in areas related to memory formation. It provides strong evidence that this GLDC triplication could be a major factor in schizophrenia.
Okay, now that's what I call a deep dive. So if this GLDC triplication is such a key player, what does that mean for treatment? What are researchers looking at based on this new information?
That's where things get even more interesting. There are a few potential avenues they're exploring, each targeting different aspects of this glycine NMDA receptor interaction.
All right, I'm all ears. Hit me with the first approach.
One approach involves directly supplementing with glycine. Basically, the idea is to flood the system with extra glycine, hoping some of it makes it past the blood-brain barrier and boost those NMDA receptors.
Seems pretty straightforward, but I'm guessing it's not quite that easy.
You're right. It's tricky because glycine isn't that great at crossing the blood-brain barrier. It's like a protective shield for the brain, so you often need really high doses, which can lead to unwanted side effects.
Okay, so not a perfect solution. What's the next option on the table?
Another approach focuses on a transporter protein called GlyT1. It kind of acts like a vacuum cleaner in the brain, removing glycine from the spaces between brain cells. So if you can block GlyT1, you essentially keep more glycine around, making it more available to those NMDA receptors.
So kind of like outsmarting the system.
Exactly. And there's a drug called bioburtin that was developed to do just that, to inhibit GlyT1. Early studies showed some promise, but unfortunately larger trials haven't been as successful.
So back to the drawing board. Are there any other promising treatment options being explored?
There are. One interesting approach involves deserine. It's a naturally occurring amino acid that, much like glycine, helps activate those NMDA receptors. It's actually even more potent than glycine at doing so.
Okay, if deserine is so effective, why not just, give people deserine supplements?
Well, there's a catch. Deserine is broken down pretty quickly by an enzyme called DAAO. So even if you supplement with it, it might not stick around long enough to make a real difference.
Ah, I see. So the focus shifts to inhibiting DAO then. What are the implications of that?
That's where DAO inhibitors come in. By blocking DAO, we can prevent deserine from breaking down so quickly, which essentially increases its levels in the brain and helps boost that NMDA receptor activity.
So inhibiting this DAO enzyme could be the key to a more effective treatment pathway. That sounds pretty promising. What have studies shown so far?
Well, the preclinical studies, the ones done in animals, have been very encouraging. They've shown that DAAO inhibitors can actually improve cognitive function in animal models of schizophrenia. It's still early days for human trials, but the potential is definitely there.
This is all incredibly fascinating. It's like we've uncovered this whole new dimension to understanding of schizophrenia, from the inner working of those NMDA receptors to the potential of targeting specific enzymes. But I imagine there are still some hurdles to overcome in developing truly effective treatments for such a complex disorder.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest challenges is the very nature of schizophrenia itself. It's incredibly diverse, meaning what works for one person might not work for another.
So no one-size-fits-all solution.
Not at all. We need to start thinking more about personalized medicine, tailoring treatments to an individual's unique genetic makeup and their specific symptoms.
That sounds like the future of healthcare. But before we get too carried away, let's dig a little deeper into these potential treatment avenues and the challenges that researchers are still facing. There's still so much to uncover.
Indeed. This is really just the tip of the iceberg, and I'm excited to share more about some of those exciting developments on the horizon. So let's pick up where we left off and dig a little deeper into those potential treatments for schizophrenia. Specifically, let's talk more about D-serine and those DAO inhibitors we touched on earlier.
Yeah, that was the part where I was like, hold on, is this science fiction or are we really getting that good at understanding the brain? It's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It really is amazing what researchers are discovering these days. So as we were saying, D-serine is kind of like a supercharged version of glycine, way more effective at activating those NMDA receptors.
Right, but then you've got that DAO enzyme lurking around, breaking down the D-serine before it can do its job. That's where the DAO inhibitors come in, right? To sort of protect the D-serine.
Exactly. DAO inhibitors act like little shields, preventing the D-serine from being broken down too quickly. This allows more D-serine to reach those NMDA receptors and, help them function better.
Okay, so that's the goal, but have we actually seen this work? What's the latest on the research with these DAO inhibitors?
Well, the preclinical studies, the ones done in animals, have been really promising. We're seeing some positive results in animal models of schizophrenia, particularly when it comes to improvements in cognitive function. But of course, translating those findings to humans always takes time and careful study. We can't just jump the gun.
Of course, safety first. But hypothetically speaking, let's say these DAO inhibitors do prove to be successful in human trials. Could this be like the breakthrough we've been waiting for in schizophrenia treatment?
That's certainly the hope. DAO inhibitors represent a whole new class of drugs that work differently than the current antipsychotics. They're targeting a different pathway in the brain, and that's really exciting. If they're successful, they could potentially provide more effective relief for some individuals with schizophrenia.
It's almost like opening up this whole new door in the treatment landscape. But we also have to be realistic, right? Schizophrenia is complex, and treatment isn't a simple fix.
You're absolutely right. One size doesn't fit all when it comes to schizophrenia. Even if the AO inhibitors work out, they're not going to be a magic bullet for everyone.
And we can't forget about that pesky blood-brain barrier. Even if we come up with a fantastic new drug, actually getting it to the brain where it needs to be, well, that's a whole other challenge.
Ah, yes, the blood-brain barrier. It's a formidable fortress protecting our brains. But it also makes delivering certain drugs a real challenge. It's an ongoing area of research, though. Scientists are always looking for ways to, bypass or cleverly navigate that barrier.
It's like this constant push and pull between our scientific advancements and the incredible complexity of the human brain. But it sounds like personalized medicine could be a real game changer when it comes to treatment.
Personalized medicine is definitely where things are heading. Imagine if we could identify individuals with specific genetic profiles, like those with the GLDC mutation we talked about, that make them more likely to respond to a particular treatment.
So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, we could tailor treatments based on someone's, their genes and their specific symptoms.
Precisely. It's about taking a more precise, targeted approach to treatment. Think about it. Right now, there's so much trial and error involved in prescribing medications for schizophrenia. With personalized medicine, we could potentially skip those unnecessary steps and streamline the treatment process, which would really increase the chances of success.
This all sounds incredibly promising, but is this something that's years away? Or is personalized medicine closer than we think?
It's definitely on the horizon, and the field is moving incredibly fast. The advancements in genetic testing and drug development are really bringing us closer to that reality every day. We're already seeing such promising results in other areas of medicine, and there's no reason why mental health can't follow suit.
It's inspiring to see how far we've come in understanding the brain and, mental illness in general. But with all this progress, we can't lose sight of the human side of things. What does all this research mean for the people actually living with schizophrenia and their families?
That's a crucial point. At the end of the day, this research is all about improving people's lives. For individuals with schizophrenia, it means finding ways to manage their symptoms, improve their overall quality of life, and hopefully reduce the stigma that's still associated with mental illness.
It's easy to get caught up in the science and forget that there are real people whose lives are so deeply affected by this disorder.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that treatment goes beyond medication. Therapy, social support, lifestyle changes, those all play a crucial role in helping people with schizophrenia live full and meaningful lives.
So it's about a holistic approach, taking into account the whole person, not just their diagnosis.
Exactly. And as we develop more effective treatments, we also need to work on creating a society that's more understanding and supportive of individuals with mental illness.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the molecular level of NMDA receptors to the potential of personalized medicine. It's a complex journey, but it feels like we're moving in the right directions.
We are. Every new discovery brings us closer to a future where mental illness no longer has the power to, define or limit someone's life.
This has been really incredible, all this progress in schizophrenia research. But I'm wondering, what's next? What are the big mysteries researchers are still trying to solve? What are they most excited about for the future of all this?
Well, one of the most exciting frontiers is figuring out how early intervention can change the course of schizophrenia. Like, imagine if we could identify people who are at risk before the disorder even fully develops.
Wow. So we're talking about potentially preventing schizophrenia altogether? That sounds incredibly ambitious.
It's definitely a huge challenge, but it's not impossible. We're getting better at identifying genetic and environmental risk factors, and the earlier we can intervene, the better the chances of preventing or at least lessening the severity of the disorder.
That would be a total game changer. But even if we can't always prevent it, it seems like personalized medicine could be a really powerful tool for helping people who are already diagnosed.
Absolutely. Imagine a future where treatment isn't just, trial and error, but a really targeted approach, one that's based on a person's unique biology. We could maybe even predict which medications would work best for them and minimize those side effects.
That's an amazing vision. It really feels like we're on the verge of a revolution in mental health care.
We are. This is such an exciting time. Genetics, neuroscience, technology, it's all coming together. And it's paving the way for a future where mental illness isn't this big mystery and where treatment is precise, effective, and tailored to the individual.
Well, you've definitely given us a lot to think about today. This deep dive into schizophrenia research has been truly eye-opening. We've gone from the tiny world of NMDA receptors to the huge potential of personalized medicine. And it's clear that the future holds a lot of promise.
It's been a pleasure sharing this journey with you. And to everyone listening, I encourage you to keep exploring this fascinating field. Read, ask questions, talk about mental health. The more we learn and the more open we are about these issues, the closer we get to a world where mental health doesn't hold anyone back.
So if you're interested in what we've discussed today, go ahead and, do your own deep dive, explore the research, talk to experts, and become an advocate for mental health awareness. We can all make a difference.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about the brain and mental illness, the closer we are to a future where everyone can thrive.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into schizophrenia research. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.